We're used to challenges to religious freedom coming from the halls of Congress, the State House, or the courtroom. We'd better be looking at the corporate boardroom as well. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. Usually, infringements on religious freedom come from the government, legislatures, regulatory agencies, local agents of inquisition, like the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. But emerging and serious threats to religious freedom are also coming from the private sector. An obvious example is the workplace. Now, I've talked for months now that Christians need a theology of getting fired. You might be great at your job, and you should be as a Christian, but you might also face pressure to affirm and support your employer's political agenda, one that has little to do with the company's business model or strategic goals. Many companies today face an incredible amount of pressure by outside advocacy groups, especially pro-LGBT organizations. The influence of these groups, especially the Human Rights Coalition, is incredible, and they reach well beyond the workplace. Recently, I hosted a Colson Center webinar with Jeremy Tedesco of the Alliance Defending Freedom to discuss the influence of these LGBT advocacy groups, including new attempts to restrict the ability of religious groups to raise money. The main strategy comes by weaponizing so-called hate group lists. Once groups like ADF are designated as hate groups by groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, corporations are then pressured to cut ties with any and all organizations that bear that scarlet H. Consider the Amazon Smile program. When participants in the program make a purchase on Amazon, 0.5% of the price of their purchase can be designated as a donation to the charity of their choice. 0.5% might not sound like much, but as of last fall, Amazon had donated more than $100 million to eligible charities through the Smile program. In response to outside pressure, Amazon now excludes any organization designated as a hate group from the program. So, ADF, the Family Research Council, and others are barred from Amazon Smile. That's a relatively minor example. But as Tedesco told us on the webinar, activists and their corporate allies have even more effective strategies to accomplish their goals. For example, companies that process credit card payments are also pressured from doing business with anyone deemed a hate group, whether they really are or not. Some of our close ministry friends, in fact, have been refused services. If a ministry you love and support cannot find someone to process their credit card donations, well, that's a huge blow. A new strategy now is to target donor-advised funds. These funds manage charitable donations on behalf of families, individuals, and organizations. They carry along specific tax benefits and are offered by most of the major wealth management organizations. Essentially, they allow a donation to be made now with the tax deduction, but distributed later according to the wishes of the donor. What many people who use donor-advised funds fail to realize is that they actually surrender ownership of the assets that they donate, and so they essentially become advisors to how the funds will be used. And now there's a move afoot to persuade those who offer the funds to exclude hate groups from receiving donations. So all it would take would be a stroke of a pen, and suddenly the donor couldn't designate his funds to the group that he wants anymore. Thankfully, there are Christian-based donor-advised funds through groups whose Christian worldview lines up with those of Orthodox faith. If you carry a donor-advised fund with someone else, it might be time to consider transferring to these providers. Two of them, National Christian Foundation and Waterstone, joined Tedesco and me on the webinar, and you can listen to a recording of that webinar by coming to our website, breakpoint.org. That's breakpoint.org. Look, these challenges are a moving target, and they're becoming more serious and more challenging day by day. I don't know if you noticed, but there were a whole lot more rainbow flags flying by corporations during Pride Month this year. Christians need to know that this new woke capitalism poses an even bigger threat to religious freedom than anything that's currently coming out of the halls of government. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.